Hello, and welcome to today's HealthITAnalytics.com webcast sponsored by Looker, improving the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of disease with data analytics. I am Lindsay Carlson, Vice President at Extelligent Healthcare Media and moderator of today's webcast. We will begin with a presentation by our speakers and conclude with a question and answer segment. Audience members can submit questions at any time during the webcast using the question tools to the left of their screens. The presentation deck is available for download under Resources on the left-hand side of your screen. For all technical matters or difficulties, click the Help icon at the top right-hand corner of the screen. A recording of the webcast will be made available following this presentation. First, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Looker. Healthcare companies must comply with complex regulations and manage vast amounts of data, everything from medical records to insurance delinquencies. Looker makes it possible to unlock the potential connections between all that data and analyze it in a secure, compliant environment. Learn more at looker.com. With that, I'd like to introduce our speakers, Judd Schneider, Vice President of Data Science at Nashville Biosciences, and Leah Jarrett, Data Scientist at Looker. Leah began her career as a PhD student in computation biology, where she was using machine learning algorithms to predict side effects for various pharmaceutical agents on an individual patient basis. While she became fascinated with the world of data science, she realized academia was no longer where she envisioned her future. She quickly transitioned into a data analyst role on the e-commerce team at PepsiCo, where she used statistics and deep learning to create marketing attribution and supply chain forecasting models. Although she was able to work on some very interesting projects, she was ultimately frustrated by data chaos and being positioned as a bottleneck for data access. She soon came across Looker, a business intelligence tool which seeks to democratize data across entire organizations. She now works as a pre-sale solution engineer, which enables her to help prospects model out their data and teach them to use their tool for various analytics and data science initiatives. Judd is an experienced technology leader with a background in product management, data science, genetics, machine learning, and healthcare with a track record of success. Currently the Vice President of Data Science with Nashville Biosciences, Judd uses advanced technology, such as Looker, to help Nashville Biosciences clients discover important genetic associations that power R&D efforts to treat diseases. Judd, I'll now hand the floor over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you for the opportunity to present and talk today. Thank you for the kind introduction. The company that I work for is named Nashville Biosciences, and we're really in the business of transforming the way that R&D is done in the life sciences. And we are really, advance the slide here. So what is Nashville Biosciences? We are a big clinical, big data and genomics company that work to accelerate the R&D activity of partners in biopharma, diagnostics, and AI industries. We really sit at the nexus of big data, genomics, and kind of clinical and R&D research for a number of these different industries. I'll give you a little bit of background on us. We're a relatively young company. We began our journey about a year ago. We are a spin out directly from Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, Tennessee. And really our mission is to deploy a number of the bioinformatic and genomic resources that are available and have been developed at Vanderbilt. A lot of these resources have been used for a number of years to power a lot of the NIH-funded and research that's been ongoing in the biomedical space at Vanderbilt. And our mission really is to try and extend that type of infrastructure to the commercial space to really empower companies to utilize these resources to further develop their drug or biologic or AI pipelines. We are a young company, but we're growing. We've partnered with over 15 pharma and diagnostic clients to date. That includes kind of your household name, large pharma companies, but also, very small, emerging companies in the biotech space. So we really work with a large variety of clients, and we can, mold our products to really suit the particular needs of our individual clients. And one of the reasons we were developed is really to tackle the major problem of how expensive it is to develop drugs today, and really try to see if we can make an impact on reducing the cost as well as improving the timeline of success. As we all know, drug development is getting more expensive. It's also becoming more difficult to source the patients that are necessary, to perform the clinical studies that are necessary, and oftentimes this cost is related to the length and the cost of clinical trials. To enroll individuals in or subjects in a prospective trial, it can go on the order of millions of dollars. Whereas we are set up to really be a resource and and use prospectively collected data already that has been developed at the medical center. And really, to tackle this approach, we have multiple dimensions that we empower. So I'll talk about it in a minute, but we have vast amounts of clinical data that have been developed and utilized over the years through BioVU, which is a long-standing program to collect de-identified EMR as well as linked biospecimen data. It's currently the largest biospecimen repository in the world, and we're tasked with bringing that to the commercial market. We also can source other biological specimens within Vanderbilt and its outlying clinics. That includes DNA, RNA, as well as other tissue types. And then when we pair that with our deep analytical capabilities, leveraging tools such as Looker, as well as other tools in the machine learning and artificial intelligence space, we really can bring this all together to empower clinical and scientific teams with data-enabled tools to really enhance their R&D goals. Give you a little bit of background about BioVU. So BioVU is a program at Vanderbilt University. It was started about 15 years ago, and it's set up as a prospective collection study. And currently we have about 3 million de-identified subjects within it. So anyone that comes into the medical center is consented, and their data is pooled into a prospective collected biorepository. Other individuals have decided to consent and donate their genetic data, and we have about 10% of that 3 million populations who have linked DNA biospecimens to that record. It's a very long, detailed data set. So we've been collecting data for a long time, but the average length of record is about 10 years long. And there's been quite a bit of investment from both the University Medical Center as well as NIH in really developing this over the past 10 years, greater than $50 million, as well as it's been highly validated within the community. So there's been over 180 peer-reviewed publications just within the medical center and their collaborators on using this biorepository to enhance biomedical research. And what's unique about it is that it's longitudinal real-world data. So it's gathered from inpatient and outpatient visits from folks who come to the medical center for treatment. This includes primary care. This includes all advanced specialties all the way through our transplant center, as well as a number of different research programs that are within the university. All of it's consented. What's unique about the way that the program is set up is it's completely de-identified, and it's actually classified as non-human subject research, which enables our customers to utilize our expedited IRB program to really get their studies ongoing and get them moving forward. We use advanced NLP to extract data out of the record and to protect the underlying patients. What's also unique about this is that there's a one-way link that's maintained. So as folks from the community or individuals from the community come in to get ongoing treatment, that data becomes updated. It gets passed through our algorithms to de-identify it, as well as pushed into through a one-way hash to ensure that one, it's not traceable back, but also two, that the records are constantly being updated. So as people are multidimensional and their care is oftentimes multidimensional, it's living database and gets updated as individuals come into the medical center. And this provides a unique setting for our clients to do basic research or research in the clinical space. We are an EMR-linked biobank, so it allows the study of a wide range of diseases. Instead of setting up a prospective study for one disease, we can look back at the historical record and really understand a full picture about these subjects and their care as well. It allows rapid experimentation and rapid hypothesis generation. So instead of just looking at one particular question, our clients can, look at the full picture and really understand or come up with new hypotheses on the fly. We're able to quickly conduct longitudinal studies because the data is already there. A lot of times, in a rare disease setting, you may have a couple individuals come into a medical center and put on a prospective trial and try to understand that clinical history. Well, for us, we just simply look backwards in time, and we can see the full complement of their care and their diagnostic journey as they've gone through the medical center. All these things lead to dramatic reductions in costs and time required to do these oftentimes laborious studies. And the other unique thing is it allows us to study disease in a real-world setting. These are individuals who are coming into the medical center who have complex disease history, and we can really study these subjects in that real-world setting. So to give you some perspective on kind of the products that we offer, we take a real consultative approach to our clients' interactions, but oftentimes our engagements really fall into these three categories. First one we call real-world cohorts, and this is all about designing a cohort in silico. So if you have inclusion-exclusion criteria for a particular study you're doing, or for example, if you're doing a natural history study of a rare disease, or you're doing an observational clinical trial, we can look back through our database, identify the subjects that have those inclusion or exclusion criteria, and create a cohort of that population as well as a matched control. And we can do this because we have a large population to draw from of unique subjects, about 3 million. The next product is called real-world materials, and we are able to acquire, sequence, and study DNA, RNA, blood, plasma, or other biospecimens, from within the medical center. And this, the power of this lies not only in our ability to source and profile specimens, but also to link it back to that deep clinical record, so that our clients really get a picture not only of the particular tissue or specimen, but also can understand the full complement of care that particular subject has undergone. The third product we have is NASH biotargets. And this is based on a statistical technique that was largely pioneered within Vanderbilt called phenome-wide association study. And oftentimes our clients will approach us with a particular drug target or a target that's hit by a biologic. And we can use this statistical technique to really understand different use cases or potential investigational use cases for this drug or biologic, as well as understand potential risk profiles when designing a phase 2 trial. So, for example, I'm going to walk you through one of our cohorts projects that we recently did, just to give you some more sense of how we work and what types of information that we're able to source. So this was a recent client where they had a single-arm clinical trial on a rare cancer that was occurred after an invasive procedure was done. And what they were really looking for was subjects that matched that clinical trial criteria, but had failed the existing standard of care. And because it was a single-arm trial, they didn't have a control arm to really do the statistical comparison against. So they came to us asking, could we assist them with this? And so what we ended up doing was we ended up, looking back through our database and then finding these subjects that match these clinical inclusion criteria. And then we used that to populate their ECRF. So we put our data into their format that they needed for their active arm so that the data was standardized. And this allowed us to really characterize that final cohort, with demographics, the symptoms and progression of disease, the therapeutic and treatment outcomes, as well as look at the mortality data that came up over a period of time. And we were able to really populate that Kaplan-Meier curve with a pseudo-placebo arm or an in silico arm, control arm for that trial. So just to give you a sense of how clients work with us, when we engage a new client, it's oftentimes a very consultative approach. So we will sit with a potential client and really try to understand what question they're trying to answer or what they're trying to achieve. And then we design a strategy based on our makeup of those three products to really answer that question. And oftentimes we find that the journey is often iterative and interactive. And this is because of the nature of the data, but also we want to ensure that our clients are getting what they need. And we want to, help put them in the position to get the best outcomes possible for their particular study. So I'm going to switch gears for a minute and talk about a little bit about, some of the operational challenges with big data that I've experienced, not only here, but also at other companies in the past. One of the things about the Nashville Biosciences data is that it's been very well characterized and very well structured, and there's an entire team over at Vanderbilt that performs this analysis, and they do a very good job of extracting the clinical data out of the raw text and putting it into a structured data. And we're very fortunate that the data is already structured in a highly flexible format called OMA, but it is on the order of several terabytes of structured data. And some of these tables have hundreds of trillions of rows to sort through. Now, when we're doing an analysis for our clients, oftentimes they're looking for very specific phenotypes or very specific pieces of information. And so we have to sort through that large amount of data to really come up with the essence of what our clients need to do their research. We have 10 years of historical record, so it's not simply that we look at, a particular drug interaction or a particular piece of, diagnostic result, but we're looking at oftentimes over time at those particular pieces of record. And our scientists, we put experts in the data directly in contact with our customers. So our scientists who have a biomedical background or who have a real-world data background are directly working with our customers to not only understand their question and formulate it in a way that we can answer it, but also to dive into the data and really understand how to answer that question in the best possible way. And so, when we're developing our internal workflows, one of the things that was really important to us is being able to deliver custom analyses to our clients, but do it in a repeatable, reliable, and efficient manner in order to really help achieve their needs. And one of the things you find oftentimes in healthcare is, especially in healthcare, but also in other industries, is that there's usually a data bottleneck in the analytics pipeline. And oftentimes it breaks down into somewhat of a common scenario where you have customers who interact with the sales team or a client services team, and they have a particular question about the data. And then that client team or sales team turns around to the data analytics team internally and says, okay, here's what my customer wants, can you answer it? Well, that more technical team then dives into the database and really tries to answer that question. Oftentimes, there's back and forth between the client services team and the analytics team, and this perpetuates a growing queue of those types of questions. And usually what happens is it gets backlogged, and it takes quite a bit amount of time for the answer to trickle back to the customer, sometimes on the order of days or weeks. And that is, for us as a data company, that was something that we didn't want to fall into, but we wanted to have a repeatable, reliable way that we could deliver information back to our customers in a much more efficient manner. Oftentimes, you're limited in the client services or sales ability to really answer this question because the data is usually in a technical format such as SQL or JSON, and there's usually a data access bottleneck that restricts those operations. For us, it was important to really, eliminate a lot of those challenges. And so what were some of the new requirements that we had for our data system? As a young company, we wanted a really expandable, extensible infrastructure to build upon. We also didn't want to make a large amount of capital investment in, on-prem hardware or other types of hardware that not only we had to purchase, but we also had to secure and maintain. And then there's also a personnel component really in managing that hardware and managing those data systems. We also wanted a new data system to be really flexible. That means we could scale on demand or retract on demand based on what we needed. We also are a young company, so we needed to rapidly iterate on our product development cycle. We wanted to be able to try new things and deliver data to our clients in a new way, and then rapidly learn from the market on what worked and what didn't work so that we could, refine our products over time and improve our outcomes for our clients. And then we wanted to eliminate the bottlenecks that I just talked about earlier. We didn't need the analytics team being in the way of our customer and client interactions, but we wanted to have the analytics team be an enabler for those interactions. And so one of the first steps that we did is, after an extensive examination of what was out there, we made a decision to go from an on-prem database really to Google Cloud Platform and leverage the petabyte scale analysis capabilities of databases like BigQuery. The other thing that using a cloud provider really affords us is those scalability factors. So we can scale to new databases on demand, or we can even deliver a database to a customer if they needed it. We can also, scale back if we needed it, or, create a highly flexible set of infrastructure. And so to eliminate the bottleneck, we partnered with Looker really to create that on-demand source of information for our client services and our sales team to interact directly with the customers with the data they needed. And our goal really was to democratize this data within our organization. So instead of creating a system whereby we had a data science team being an actual bottleneck, we created a system whereby we could be enablers of our customers and our sales and scientific teams. So instead of taking a day or two for a question to be answered, we can empower our sales team, our scientific team with the answers they needed immediately, and they just simply run a query and they get the answers back. And the data science team really now functions more as a product development engine, as well as a source or a resource for the client services and sales teams to answer really hard queries that may require some more technical expertise. But we can save our resources for those particular use cases instead of being a bottleneck. And this enabled us to really standardize workflows. And so instead of hundreds of single-use SQL scripts that were stored in text files or ETL that's done on the fly every single time a data is pulled, all of that is done pre-processed and done upfront before the analysts ever even see the data. Instead of our primary delivery mechanism being Excel, we leverage a wide variety of different techniques and formats. So, for example, cloud databases, data extracts, population of ECRFs, as well as still sometimes interacting with Excel and PowerPoint, which is very flexible. Instead of having many ways to answer the same question, we have a level of consistency that the Looker dashboards and explorers allow us to compel our genomic scientists and our sales team to answer the same question in one different way. And we can scale really and leverage the cloud computing power that's available through these different platforms. And just to give you a sense of who else is in the company, our leadership team comprises of myself, Leland, our founder and COO, and then James Stover, our Chief Business Officer. And we are, a growing team, so we, are looking for new individuals to join us over time. So if you are so inclined, please feel free to reach out. And then our board is also made up of experienced professionals from the medical device industry, consulting, as well as the academic medical center. And so if you would like to reach out and learn more about Nashville Biosciences, please feel free to contact us. Here's some information whereby you can reach us. My email is also should be available for this presentation. And I'm happy to answer some questions, but I'm going to save them until after Leah is done. And so, Leah, I would like to hand over the presentation to you at this point.
Great. Thanks so much, Judd. Hi, everybody. This is Leah from Looker. And kind of going back to my introduction, I have a background in biomedical informatics, and then I went into the world of data science. And now I'm really happy to be working with companies like Nashville Bio through Looker, doing exactly what Judd was talking about, basically democratizing access to this data. So I want to start by kind of giving an introduction to the Looker platform. So Looker is kind of different from some other BI platforms that you'll see across the market, mainly because of our core architecture. So at its base, we have all these different data sources. Going off of what Judd was saying before, we might have different public data sets, biomedical research data like genomics information, clinical outcome data, patient medical data, or EMR information. And with Looker, we want you to centralize that all into one SQL-compliant database. And now this is especially important for healthcare organizations because when you're working in the medical industry, you have a ton of data. Going back to what Judd was saying before, petabytes of information, millions of patient samples, thousands of patient records. And with Looker, we want you to kind of control access to that data. So we want you to make sure that that data is secure. And since we have all of this data, it needs to be in a really efficient computational database. So something like a Google BigQuery, a Snowflake, an Amazon Redshift. The companies who have really truly mastered the art of cheap, efficient, and secure data storage and computation. So now where Looker comes in is Looker is just a lightweight web-based tool, right? And it's mostly made up of this agile modeling layer. Now this is where Looker is going to make dealing with medical data really easy because we have an agile modeling layer that's basically going to allow access to your data in a democratized way, but make sure that it's all governed. So extensive user management and security, which means that, if I'm a hospital logging into Looker, I should only see my patients. Git version control, which means that we can collaborate across different analytics or data teams, each working on our own personal development branch, testing changes out, and then committing it to the production environment when we're ready. And also being able to revert changes. So once we have these reusable definitions and user management in our modeling layer, that's where we're able to expose out this information to everyone who needs it. So just like at Nashville Biosciences, giving direct access to that customer success or that sales team, or giving access to the doctors, the researchers, the data that they need without needing to go through a bottleneck. So Looker allows you to take this governed data, this transformed data, and expose it out via a self-service exploration environment, visualizations in a dashboard or report, export it in a variety of different formats, so CSV, PDF, or having scheduled delivery, embedding it into another application or a customer portal, or accessing it through our RESTful API, which allows us to take this governed data and do things like plug it into a machine learning algorithm, have it interact with other applications to trigger operational value. So I want to take a step back for a second and kind of hone in on one of these use cases that here at Looker we work directly with Nashville Bio and Judd's team on. So as a refresher to everyone, I'm sure we all took biology at some point in our life. We have something like 40 trillion cells in our body, right? And each one of those cells has a nucleus, this little purple dot in the middle. And that nucleus is going to contain all of our genetic information in the form of DNA, right? And that DNA makes up 23 pairs of chromosomes, with each one of those chromosomes being divided into a long arm and a short arm and different regions. Then within each one of those regions, we may have bands, and within those bands, we'll have subbands. And together, all of this information makes up our locus, so the location of a specific nucleotide in our genome. So I'm sure you understand what I'm getting at. Basically, this means this is a ton of data, a ton of information. So going back to Looker's architecture, you can't use an in-memory solution for something like genomics data. You really need to harness the computational power of an analytical database. So when we're looking at a string of our DNA, you may have one nucleotide changing, or having a different result in one person versus another person. So when we're looking at genomics data, we compare, for example, a patient's genomic information against a reference to understand where these mutations are and how they can be linked to different diseases. One type of those mutations are single nucleotide polymorphisms. And this is just when a single nucleotide is changing its value. So for this use case, we're going to be looking at data revolving around single nucleotide polymorphisms. So each single nucleotide polymorphism, and I'm going to call it a SNP from now on, has a locus attached to it. And let's say in our raw data, we have this locus. It's a string. It just tells us 3p21.1. But now let's say we want to be able to look at something like all of the mutations on a chromosome, all of the mutations on a specific arm of a chromosome, or all the specific mutations on a certain band in a region, in an arm, in a chromosome, right? We can't do that if we just have this one string of information. So what Looker's modeling layer allows us to actually do is put in the logic for how to extract this detailed data one time in one single place. And here is a screenshot of something we built when working with Nashville Bio. So basically, we had this locus. It was just a column in our data table in BigQuery. Now we need to extract chromosome. Okay, so maybe we need some SQL functions to extract that information. Now we need to extract the arm, the region, the band, the subband. Now once this is all codified in one place, one time, if we need to make changes to these definitions, we only need to update it in this single modeling layer. Now we can do things like add filters to all of our dashboards with this extracted information. So for example, if we want an overview dashboard where we can come in, let's say, one of these customers for Nashville Bio has emailed their sales representative and they've said, I need a list of all the SNPs in this specific location on a chromosome. Well, now we can come in, just simply filter those values. So this can be done by anyone, not a data scientist. It can be a customer success manager. It can be a sales manager. Coming in here, having access to this information in a controlled way. So maybe they can't see PHI, maybe they can only see certain records, or it needs to be anonymized before they're able to access this. So you can start to understand how Looker was a tool that's really built to work really well with the biomedical and healthcare industry. So let's hone in on another example of this. when we're looking at these different mutations, they can be categorized in a variety of different ways based on how they're affecting the body and the different pathways that this gene may be involved in. So when you're collecting data from lots of different sources, that means you have holes and gaps in the information, right? So I might know if a mutation was a stop-loss mutation. But if my sales representative is coming in and they want to account of all of the coding mutations, we need to be able to tell Looker, okay, a stop-loss mutation is also nonsense, non-synonymous, encoding. So again, in the modeling layer, we're able to tell Looker the logic of these definitions. We're able to say, okay, Looker, if we see in our data that is stop-loss, we need to fill in this other information so we have an entire picture. And so our non-technical folks don't need to worry about all of this, right? They just need to grab the answers to the customers. They just need quick answers to their ad hoc questions. So from there, we might want to do something like now use that information to create a gene lookup dashboard. And this is where Looker's operational value really comes in. Because at Looker, we don't want you to just be looking at a dashboard or looking at this one number. We really view data as a way to take action on information. So if we had started, and let me just go back to this dashboard. If we had started with our overview dashboard, we came in, we wanted all the details on all the mutations in this one part of the chromosome. But then maybe we want to actually click on one of these genes, and we want it to bring us to this gene lookup dashboard. So now we can hone in and get the more detailed information about this gene. Now from here, we want to know, okay, when somebody's looking at this gene lookup dashboard, what are they actually going to be doing with this information? And if you remember from that initial architecture slide, basically we were saying that Looker can deliver information in a lot of ways. We can interact with other applications. We can send data as a webhook. We can, create data actions. So in this case, we knew that when we're drilling into this information, we want to see all the MySense SNPs on this one gene. Once we get to that row level detail, we need to actually go and look this up in the NCBI's DB-SNP database. So we built out a link to directly allow our team members to then transfer to that website. So I've seen other healthcare organizations use features like this by saying, okay, we're looking at this patient's data and it seems like we need to schedule a follow-up appointment with them. So having an action to, schedule a follow-up appointment, or maybe send an alert to their primary care doctor, or maybe we need to modify an EHR. So these are all things that we can do within the Looker platform. And going back to what Judd was saying, the main idea is that we want to democratize access to this information, but in a controlled and governed fashion. So that was kind of the majority of what I wanted to present today. We have a few different resources for you to check out and learn more about Looker. I think at this point, we might start doing some Q&A. So Lindsay, I think I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you so much, Leah. We will now move on to the Q&A portion of the webcast. Audience members can submit questions using the question tools to the left of their screen. We had quite a few questions come in, so I'm going to try to get to them as fast as I possibly can. Hold on one moment. First question, what is big data? Is there a single definition, or does it depend on many factors?
I'll go ahead and take this, Leah, but I'm sure you're going to have something to add too. Big data is really data that, because of this amount and the type of data, becomes complex and becomes unwieldy to use standard business tools, as I'll say, to use it. So things on the order of gigabyte level or terabyte level or even petabyte level becomes unwieldy to either hold in memory or open in Excel or things like that. And oftentimes you find with big data, simply managing the size of it is a non-trivial exercise in and of itself. And Leah, do you have anything to add to that?
I very much agree with you, Jed. I think one thing I'll also add to when I think about big data is that it's often coming from multiple sources. And we need to find a way to relate those sources to each other to get a comprehensive picture of the entire story.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Great, thank you. Judd, we're going over to going back a little bit into slide 6, which I actually just pushed out to the audience here. You said you leverage the data from EMR. Who owns the data from the EMR? It should be the hospital, not the third-party company, right?
Correct. And so we are actually a wholly owned subsidiary of Vanderbilt University Medical Center. The important thing about this data is it's not directly from the EMR, but it is translated and de-identified first. It is completely de-identified data. We actually do not work with PHI, and that is by design. We the research subjects who have consented to be a part of this biorepository, we take that privacy very, very seriously, and it's something that we hold very in high regard. The data itself, even though the source of it may be the EMR, there's an entire team that their primary function is to extract the meaningful pieces of information out of that record and turn it into a de-identified resource that can be used, in a commercial setting or even in a research setting. And so, for us, because we are wholly owned by the medical center still does own that information, but we really take privacy very seriously. The other thing that is important to note about our database is that you cannot recontact individual subjects. So oftentimes we get questions about, hey, I'm enrolling in a clinical trial, can I contact subjects from your database? And the answer to that is no. Because we have that one-way link, we cannot go backwards and identify individual subjects that have consented to be a part of this research.
And Judd, how do you realistically sieve through the huge amount of big data you talked about in the de-identified EMR records? Do you use machine learning to help with that?
So it's a good question. We use a variety of different techniques. Machine learning is something that I have a background in, and we haven't really kind of begun that journey yet with this, but we have after working with this data for a number of years, our staff really has a good understanding of what to look and go and how to look for that particular set of information. So our genomic scientists and our sales team really become our customers' team as experts in the data so that we can really facilitate that interaction. We've worked with some clients that, do want a data extract or just a dump of the data, but oftentimes we find that having that, service integration or having that, individual who has knowledge of the data really becomes an enabler for our customers, simply because they have so much experience, they know where to look, they also know what's not good about the information, and they can really sort through it. Technologies such as Looker definitely do help, we're developing new internal tools all the time to really expedite that process, but it is one of expertise that we leverage right now.
One thing I'll add to that, Judd, is what I've seen working across lots of different companies is that you want to start off looking at the data at the macro level, right, like your sums, your averages, and be able to drill down or filter down specifically based on what you're seeing. So that makes dealing with this huge amount of data a little bit easier. If you're looking at a bar chart, drilling into one of those bars. Then from there, filtering on a different aspect. Then from there, linking out to maybe a new dashboard where you're just looking at a specific piece of information.
Great, thank you. Next question. You mentioned reverting changes in the data. Are there redundancy checks in place to ensure that a single malicious actor or unintentional change does not compromise the integrity of the data?
I'll answer that one.
Go ahead.
So within the modeling layer itself, basically what this version control allows us to do is I can expose access, first of all, to change the definitions to whoever I see fit. So let's say I expose it to just me and Judd. I create one definition, he comes in and he changes it. The benefit of the collaborative nature of having Git enabled with our platform is that he can only test out the changes on his branch if he wants to. If he pushes it out to production, which means that the definition is changed across the board, we can still revert those changes. We can also put placeholders if necessary to basically say these metrics cannot be changed. And because Looker is doing these calculations at runtime, it's never affecting the raw data. So it doesn't go back and change any raw data ever.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. So one of the things that we, the way we architect a lot of our systems is we save all the source data, and then all the transformations that are done is stored in source control. So we actually do a lot of pre-processing of the data prior to it ever reaching the database. And the reason we do that is we can save each one of those transformation steps in a pipeline format, such that we know what happened to the data, when it happened to the data, all the time. And also we can rebuild our complete data asset from scratch anytime we want. So it really allows us to not only maintain really tight control of all those transformations, but to really monitor it for all the anyone who has access to that infrastructure, so we can see if there was a change that was made that was broken, and we can fix it by just regenerating all the information.
Great, thank you. Judd, this is a question for you. This person was especially interested in learning more about how Nashville Biosciences is managing data anonymization. Is anonymization done with BigQuery? Are there any exceptions to this anonymization? And if so, what best practices do you use to keep the data secure?
Yeah, so for us, we're fortunate in that the team at Vanderbilt performs a lot of the anonymization on our behalf, and they have a decade of history of doing that anonymization, and so we really leverage that capability and the expertise of that team to continue to do so. For us, we're more about protecting data security and data access, and if you think about data security, probably the top 15 people in the world really either work for Google, Amazon, or Microsoft. We as a small company can't hire that type of help, and so we really leverage the security protocols and all the things that are developed in our cloud resources. And that way we can, it's a constant evolution of us for our data security, but it's something we take very, very seriously, and something that we're happy to leverage a lot of the cloud security infrastructure that's available.
Yeah, one thing I'll add to that, when I am talking to people who are considering switching from an on-prem database to a cloud-hosted database, one example I like to give is if you have this large amount of money, do you want to put it in a bank, or do you want to keep it in your bedroom? In your bedroom, you have direct control over it, but you're relying on your own personal security instead of relying on the security of this established foundation that focuses specifically on this.
Great, thank you so much. Next question. Does Looker customize your resource usage, like your genomic data that you're talking about here, with each of your customers for their own needs?
Yes.
Go ahead, Leah.
No, you go ahead. I can add.
I would say that a lot of it's developed built into how you set up Looker. So a lot of the design decisions you make when installing the system. For us, we largely leverage it right now for an internal solution. But our customer requirements are oftentimes unique. So we have customers that want a entire database, in the cloud, and we manage that through a service account. We have other customers that want Excel files or want data delivery in some type of different custom extract. And so for us, Looker is one dimension to that, but there's also times a number of different ways that we provide that information.
Yeah, and I may be wrong, but the way I interpreted the question is this kind of the business logic that's put into that model layer, is that customized for each one of Looker's customers? And yeah, the answer to that would be yes. Basically, every one of our customers goes through an implementation period where our engineers kind of help you sit down, scope out your use case, and figure out how to build the model that's best going to suit your needs. From there, we want you guys to be managing the instance, so being able to add your own definitions as you see fit.
Great, thank you so much. Next question. What would happen in a case where genomic data had already been processed? Certain segments have been labeled nonsense, but later the segment in question is determined to be clinically relevant.
Yeah, so the genome is a very big thing. One of the ways that we architect a lot of our pipelines is really to allow us the flexibility if that type of analysis needs to be rethought or redone. And so, oftentimes our customers will come to us looking at a particular region of the chromosome or a particular gene of interest or sets of genes of interest. And we can customize our analysis to those specific regions. And we have the flexibility really to do that based on, our customer experts, inquiries. We don't really perform whole-scale analysis of the entire genome, looking at things that are relevant or irrelevant. It's really used as an in-house resource for us to serve our clients' needs.
Okay, thank you so much. A couple more questions here, but just a reminder to those who would like to ask a question, you can submit questions using the question tool to the left of their screen. Do you create import forms to gather and assemble data that is not ordinarily in the medical record? For example, a composite measure as an outcome assessment?
Yeah, so we've had a couple of projects where we've had to generate some of these composite measures that are more used in a clinical trial setting, but not necessarily used in a direct patient care setting. It's something that we have done. It's something that we can do, and oftentimes, there are nuances into the way that the data is collected that we take into account whenever building those composite measures. Our scientific team has, I think, done this for 3 or 4 different clients, and we've had very good success with that. Sometimes the other thing to note that's unique about our data is when you're looking at a text representation of a clinical record, the team that extracts data out of that text does an excellent job, but sometimes not every question has been abstracted out. And so when our customers approach us with unique questions that aren't pulled out into structured data, we go back and get that information. We had a recent case where there was a common use of basically demarcating pain, and we pulled that particular score out of the clinical record on a few hundred different subjects, or maybe 1,000 different individuals, pretty rapidly. So we have a lot of flexibility in what we're able to gather, and if we don't have something in structured data, it does not mean that we can't go back and identify that particular piece of information.
Great, thank you so much. Last question. It seems that being able to reverse contact specific research participants would be beneficial. Is there work being done in a secure way to allow back and forth communication without compromising patient privacy?
Today, that is not in development. As we are set up and as we are moving forward, patient privacy is something that we take extremely seriously. And the way the entire database is designed and structured and has been used for 15 years, that has never been really an option for us. We do, however, have through the clinical trial center here at Vanderbilt a way to do prospective clinical trials, and we have facilitated prospective new trials on behalf of other companies that wanted to contact individuals. So but that is a entirely separate thing beyond the database. That is a new trial with a new collection interface that is separate. But if you have any needs that would require that, please feel free to reach out and we can help facilitate that.
Thank you so much. This concludes today's HealthITAnalytics.com presentation. A special thanks to our speakers, Judd and Leah, our audience, and our sponsor, Looker. Thank you and goodbye.